Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about how this mystery of this next Nintendo Direct has continued. And what I'm getting at here is a Nintendo Direct in this month of February, before the big Switch 2 Direct this April. There is a very consistent history of Nintendo Directs happening in the month of February, and we have a rumor from a credible place that has also accurately predicted several Directs in the past, has also said multiple times that a Direct is still happening in this month of February. But there have been some recent updates that are certainly leaving a lot of people quite confused as to what is actually going to happen, and that's what I want to dive into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit that notification bell. So going back to last year, PH Brazil was accurate on there being multiple Directs throughout the year, including even talking about how there would be multiple Directs in the month of August, which was something that had never happened before. And yet what happened? Exactly that. There were multiple Nintendo Direct presentations in the month of August. And PH Brazil also said, dating back to last year, that there would be a Direct this February. And even more recently in this new year, PH Brazil has said multiple times that he has still heard that there will be a Direct this February having to do with Nintendo Switch 1. Even here on Family Boards on January 16th, 2025, the day of the Switch 2 reveal when they confirmed that there would be a big Switch 2 Direct in April, Brazil said absolutely in February when it comes to the idea about there being one more Switch 1 related Direct before the big Switch 2 presentation. But last week when Nintendo announced the time of day for a Switch 2 Direct in April, some people took that to mean that that somehow means there won't be any other presentations until that point in time. Which I don't really agree with. They didn't say that, so I don't think we should assume that. This kind of goes back to the conversation that came up after Nintendo told us back in May of 2024 that they would be providing an announcement about Switch 2 before the end of the fiscal year, which ends March 31st, 2025. And people took that to mean, oh, that means that for sure the announcement won't come until March, but it came. Actually, there were multiple announcements. There was an announcement about backwards compatibility in November of last year, and then they gave us the first look reveal trailer in January, and of course now we know the big presentation's happening on April 2nd. Point is, at face value, all Nintendo told us is the time of the Switch 2 Direct in April. That shouldn't have any bearing on whether there will be a Direct in February or not having to do with Switch 1. However, these concerns about a Switch 1 Direct happening in February escalated because on Twitter, another known industry insider, one who told us that the reveal would be happening on January 16th and stood by that even when on the 15th late at night Nintendo still hadn't announced anything, Nate the Hate has said he has yet to hear anything about a Direct happening in February. So here Tosamnu asked, got anything to share, not about the date necessarily, about the February Nintendo Direct, like some game or the week it's happening? Nate responds, have nothing to share. Beyond there being rumored talk of a February Direct, I haven't heard anything about one or when one may happen. I'm currently in the dark on whether a February Direct will come to be or not. And so before continuing, what is said right here goes back to what we were just talking about. People jumping to conclusions about what someone is saying. All Nate has said is that he has not heard of a February Direct yet. That doesn't mean one will not happen. Of course, you could take to mean that if he hasn't heard of one, that maybe one is not happening soon, and so while this is in no way any confirmation that there will not be a Direct in February, I can see how some people might be growing concerned. We are now in the second full week of the month of February, nothing has been announced yet, and beyond PH Brazil, there do not seem to be any other murmurings. Continuing later into this thread, so ignoring if February Direct is coming or not, that Kirby port is coming nonetheless, huh? I think you mentioned it in a podcast. Nate, correct. Planet Robobot will find its way to Switch. Tosamnu, do you know when it will approximately be announced or released? It would mean a lot. And Nate responds, only know it's slated for 2025. So a while back, Nate the Hate said that he had heard that Kirby Planet Robobot will be coming to Nintendo Switch, and here he is reiterating upon that, but also saying specifically that it's coming in the year of 2025. And I actually find this to be very interesting, because here we are in February, nothing's been announced yet about Kirby Planet Robobot, but when looking at the last few mainline Kirby releases, they all come out early in the year. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe came out in February. Kirby and the Forgotten Land came out in March. Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn came out in March. Kirby Star Allies came out in March. And so considering that nothing's been announced yet, I think it's safe to say that the next Kirby game probably is not coming out February or March. But I do think that in general, they like to have the mainline Kirby releases come out early on into the year, which I think would suggest that an announcement should happen soon. Now, something else to consider is that with the Switch 2, things may be happening a bit differently than usual, so they might be spacing out some titles a little bit later into the year, and so maybe a Kirby game that would normally come out early on into the year will be coming out a little bit later because of the Switch 2 situation. That is possible. But if a Kirby announcement is to be happening soon, I do think that does somewhat suggest that some kind of Direct has a decent chance of happening in this month of February. Even if it's a Twitter Direct where Nintendo simply has a series of social media announcements, the kinds of announcements that we could see in a Direct. But up to this point, Nate the Hate has not heard about a Direct, and there has really been no one else but PH Brazil that has heard about a Direct happening in this month of February currently. And so this is what Brazil had to say in response to the different conversations going on right now about this Direct maybe not happening or happening. About the Direct, I'll keep looking into things, and in case I learn of anything that contradicts what I said previously, I'll be open with it as I've always been. Regardless, as far as I'm aware, I was the only person who knew and talked about the August Direct last year, all the way to the day it was announced. So from my perspective, what's happening now isn't enough to make me doubt my sources yet. Edit. I've also been sent the Nate vs. Pornhub Brazil Reddit comment, and for Christ's sake, I love Nate. Always have a blast with his podcast, and he's much better connected than I am. I will never be versus Nate. And this also goes back to this conversation about reading beyond what people have said. Nate has not said that Brazil is incorrect with his information, neither has Brazil. Nate has simply said he has not heard of anything yet. And it's quite frankly that simple. That doesn't mean something isn't going to happen, they have simply not heard of it, and this does indicate that both Nate the Hate and PH Brazil would have different sources on the matter. But the other takeaway from this is that yes, Brazil still believes that a Direct is happening in the month of February, as of February 9th, 2025. Can there be some changes or updates? Sure, but currently, he still thinks one is happening. Another point I'll bring up though is that he did mention that he was the only person who had talked about an August Direct last year. And I will say Brazil was talking about there being an August Direct pretty early on, but there were whispers of a Direct happening in August, at least in some non-public conversations. And right now, those kinds of conversations don't seem to be happening. So personally, I've been thinking that a Direct in this week makes a lot of sense. But now that we are in this week and no sort of conversations seem to have started, I'm starting to grow doubtful of a Direct happening on this week. That can change very quickly, but at this point I'm starting to wonder, okay, well if there's going to be a Direct, then it's starting to look like next week might be the better bet. Which I find to be a bit of a peculiar situation because we're also expecting a Pokemon Presents in the final week of February, so you would assume that Nintendo will want to space these out a little bit, but maybe they don't. And if we have to wait until next week for a February Direct, if there even is to be one, then the theory about there maybe being some sort of announcement about a Metroid Prime 2 remaster shall drop and then for a release to come out a couple weeks later, I suppose that could still happen, but at that point we're talking about another physical release for March in the same month as Xenoblade Chronicles X, which can totally happen. They're not locked to having everything done in one single month. They can be spread across 2 months. They can shall drop a Prime 2 remaster in the month of February, and then at the beginning of March there can be the physical release, and then a few weeks later we can still see the release for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. But that is just a theory based off the idea that Nintendo would want to put out Prime 2 and 3 in lead up to Prime 4, and also thinking that they would treat them similar to how they treated Prime 1 Remastered. But there's a pretty good chance that they may not treat Prime 2 or 3 like Prime 1 Remastered at all. They might bundle them together, they might not be as ambitious of remasters, and they could be treated more so like Pikmin 1 and 2 were treated shortly before the release of Pikmin 4. So we might have to wait to see Prime 2 and 3 on Switch until just a few weeks before the release of Prime 4. I personally think that when it comes to games like Metroid Prime 2 and 3, these are longer adventures than Pikmin 1 and 2. So to me, it makes more sense to have them come out more than just a few weeks before the release of Prime 4, maybe by a couple months. It's a mystery as to exactly how Nintendo is going to go about this, and if there even will be a Direct in February. I think it still makes sense for there to be Nintendo announcements in the month of February, whatever form that may take, because we don't know much about Switch 1 beyond just Xenoblade Chronicles X coming out in March. Yes, we know Pokemon Legends ZA and Prime 4 are on the horizon, but how far into the horizon? And there's really nothing else, specifically from Nintendo. So we need to get more information from them, likely in this month of February, because they would need to start outlining other things coming out with some time in advance. So I'm still thinking something happens in this month of February beyond the expected Pokemon Presents in the last week of the month. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.